Hi guys, Freddy here and welcome back to a modern RPG. Now in the past I've made no secret that I'm a big fan of the Star Wars role-playing game by West End Games. The D6 system's fantastic. I find it so fast and so easy to remember that the rules just get out of the way and I can get on with games mastering. I love it so much that I've been running it for 20 odd years. I've been running a website devoted to it for 20 years, or coming up to 20 years now. And so much so that I'm games mastering a session of it in about 5 hours time. But I was delighted when I logged onto my Facebook the other night and I received an advert for a Kickstarter for Carbon Grey, the role-playing game, which uses the D6 system and has West End Games logo on its cover. So I immediately had a look. They've got a free to download Quickstart book and some background setting book. So I grabbed both of those and I thought I'd have a look through them because I've had a glimpse already and they are pretty darn good. This is what a quick start really should be as far as I'm concerned, so I'd kind of like to rave about it. But let's go over to the computer desktop and let's have a look through the PDFs. So this is the Carbon Grey role-playing game. Now it comes as two books, the Quick Start Rules and the Settings Primer. And it's really nice to see the West End Games logo back there. I really do adore seeing it back once more, even though really it just seems to be a homage to the D6 system, because this has no connection at all to the old West End Games products. But if we start flicking through the Settings Primer, we can see this is just basically an introduction to the setting itself. So, where lies your destiny? Talking about the Carbon Grey role-playing game is a gateway to a turbulent, dystopian, dieselpunk world at war. Whatever role you assume is up to you. We've got the world of Carbon Grey, going back into the history, so in the universe before us, in the time of giants, a star screamed from the heavens. The powers that be, talking about the Middle European Empire and the allies who are fighting it, the Great War. So it's got the world at war, the Western Front, dogfights and air raids, forces on the front. We've got the Sisters Grey here, cannon walkers, Fenris packs, stone demons. And then it goes into the themes of the war itself. So you've got war is hell, revolution, imperialism, propaganda versus truth, and the darkness within. Because this is very much still similar to the Star Wars role-playing game, where Star Wars has the dark side. Carbon Grey has corruption, so you've still got a thing there. Continuing through, what is a role-playing game? So just a standard introduction to role-playing, talking about West End Games retro RPG roots back into Ghostbusters and Star Wars. It then talks about the magnetic variant, which is their particular variant of the D6 system, which I'll go into great detail in the Quick Start guide itself. But they talk about how they've streamlined it and changed it slightly because it was a flawed system. There was a few problems with it. Again, lovely artwork, because it's from a comic book series, which the comic book series started in 2011, but I've not really been aware of it at all. It's something that's just passed me by. Although I'm a big comic collector and graphic novels and role-playing games, Carbon Grey is just something I've not been aware of at all. We've got mental defense and then corruption points, as I talked about it. We've got types of play. Now, this is something which kind of different to Star Wars, and I like it. So we've got serial play, which is your standard campaign play. Players come back week after week and take part in multiple adventures. But we've got premiere play. So one-off adventures which are way more dangerous. The game's set up so there's occasions when the players probably aren't going to make it out alive. And I really like that idea that you're building it into the system that, yeah, let's play a premiere adventure which is just going to kill everybody off, and everybody knows that before they go in. You're not going to be disappointed. You're going to get a chance to die in a heroic and spectacular fashion. We've got solo play adventures. So it mentions that the rulebook will have some of those, and basically they're going to be your choose-your-own-adventure type. The Star Wars 2nd edition revised and expanded had some of those in it. Lovely artwork, really are impressed. Now we talk through character creation, because the D6 system uses character archetypes. Talks about your persona, your quirks and your obligations. So advantages and disadvantages type things. Whether you want to use miniatures, different archetype types, and the lifestyles. So you can have aristocracy, doughboys, outlaws. And then we're on to the back. So that's only only 14 pages long. Now that's going to be one of my criticisms of Carbon Grey, is that why did they bother releasing 2 free books when they could have just released one and added about 3 pages to it? It's not like it's going to make much difference, because as we get onto the Quickstart guide, this is some 80 pages long. So would it really have made any difference if it had been 85 pages long and we'd ditched the elements which are repeated, the introduction to role-playing, stuff about archetypes? That's all repeated in this book, so there's no need for it to be separate in the other one. But let's start flicking through. So we've got Operation Quickstart and a page of contents. Now, one of the things I'd like to draw attention to is the graphic design is by Jared Earl of Nightfall Games. So we're back onto Nightfall Games here. Now, I reviewed, it would have been back before Christmas, I think, the Terminator RPG Quickstart game, and I wasn't massively impressed with it. Well, I am the opposite with this. This is absolutely stunningly good. I am so impressed. I hope the Kickstarter is massively successful. Carrying on, where lies your destiny? As I said, some of these sections seem very repeated from the other book, but nice artwork. I suppose they're getting a chance to show off some brilliant artwork. A more detailed version of the background story and the world, the powers that be, the world at war. But as you see, so much of this section is just repeated. We've got currencies and information on that. This is more fleshed out though. Lifestyles, what is a role-playing game, West End Games retro RPG roots, again, all just repeated from the book. The magnetic variant. Types of play, character creation. We're getting up to page 10, and really this is repetitive from the other book. So we've got character archetypes here, which are a bit more detailed out. Quick start characters. And then we're onto the rules primer. Now this is where I'm going to get into it, because as I said, I've run Star Wars for 20 odd years. It's a rule system I love, the D6 system. Now what they've done is they've taken away the technical attribute. Because in Star Wars you've got dexterity, knowledge, perception, mechanical, technical, and strength. Well, they've taken away technical and rolled it into mechanical. And that's something I like a lot. There was no need for 2 skills like that. If somebody's good with machines, they're good at piloting them. I'm fine with that. They've taken willpower and made it its own attribute. And something else they've done is every attribute now has 6 skills. Which makes a lot more sense, because strength was always underserved by skills, but was important for resisting damage. So you would have a high number in your strength, so you were resistant to damage, but then never really use it apart from brawling and resisting damage. So there is reasons for having a high strength now, apart from that. As we can carry on through, it goes through the difficulty numbers, which look very, very similar. They've rationalised them slightly, I think, but it looks very, very similar. There's a point on skills I'm going to come to in a minute, because they've changed that, and I'm not sure how. It doesn't really go into it. This is quick start rules, so they do skip over some things. We've got a page here for classic D6 system fans explaining the changes they've made. Success and failure. So if you are beating the target number by 3 times, then you are getting exceptional success, ordinary success for doing up to double it. Achieving it exactly is a partial success, and then you've got ordinary failure, exceptional failure, and catastrophic failure below that, which is fair enough. It also then goes on to the wild die, which they handle a bit differently from the D6 system, or from the Star Wars D6 system. If the wild die is a 6 and you succeeded, then an ordinary success becomes an exceptional success and the player gains 1 hero point. Or the player gains 2 hero points. Or another player or ally in the scene gains 1 hero point. Now that's the player that gets to decide that. If the roll fails, the player can choose that the wild die is rolled again and added. So the roll and add that the Star Wars D6 system did. Or the roll fails, but the player grants 1 hero point to another player or ally in the scene. So if you failed it and you failed it by masses and the reroll of the wild die isn't going to succeed, you can choose to benefit somebody else by your failure. That's an interesting set of choices. If you fail, then the games master gets to choose. If you roll a 1 on your wild die, the games master gets to choose. To introduce a setback, additional time or resources are required. Or an ordinary success becomes partial success and the player gains 1 hero point. The roll fails and the player gains 2 hero points. Or if they've failed the roll and rolled a 1 on the wild die, the games master can choose to introduce a setback. Turn an ordinary failure into exceptional failure and the player gains 1 hero point. Turn an exceptional failure into a catastrophic failure and the player gains 2 hero points. Well, that's all well and good, but it kind of annoys me. I don't quite like it as much as the system, but I do really appreciate there being more options. And I can see myself raiding these rules to enhance my Star Wars game in the future. So we've got bonuses and penalties onto dice rolls. We've got hero points. Well, these are essentially force points, but what becomes clear is they are far faster at coming and going than force points were. Force points you would get in adventures and you would spend them through the adventure, but in Carbon Grey you get hero points throughout. You know, you mess up a dice roll or you do well at a dice roll, you get some hero points and you spend them, and they come and go throughout the adventure, instead of it being you get awarded at the end of the adventure and you spend them through it and you maybe earn more. It becomes a constant thing, and I think they'll be far more commonly used. The whole Star Wars thing of just using them at dramatically appropriate times. In Carbon Grey, I think people will tend to use hero points a lot more frivolously, just to achieve silly things. And I do like that. That is an improvement. But you can double the die code of a single roll after penalties are applied, but before rolling. So, like the force dice approach, except the force dice would work for a whole round. This just does one thing. Reroll a failed roll. Or when you gain the wounded, incapacitated or mortally wounded condition, reduce it to a stunned instead. So you can spend these in combat to constantly just get stunned, but we'll come to stunned again because that's a problem of its own. Got keeping track of time, quick, basic and slow actions, and then we're on to the skills. Again, with a slight complaint, I am not a massive fan of this font that they've used here. I keep glancing at the screen and seeing dexterity kill. The S's almost come across as brackets rather than S's. I am not massively impressed with those. But font choices, I've made many bad font choices in my own life, so I'm not going to criticize too much on that. So we've got the 6 dexterity skills. We've got acrobatics, melee, reflex, ride, sleight of hand and stealth. Now something I noticed which concerned me was that the reflex skill is used for reacting to danger and determining initiative in combat. Now, I suddenly wondered if that was taking attention away from perception. Because in Star Wars, if you're creating a fighting character, you need 3 stats. You need perception, so you go first in combat. You need dexterity, so you can hit with guns and dodge. And you need strength to hit in melee or brawl in combat and resist damage. They're your 3 stats. Everything else is dump. But that's 50% of your stats you need to prioritize. So either your character is going to be very samey, or you're going to have to choose whether you totally go with it. In what I was thinking they were doing in this, if you only have 2 stats, then everything else becomes a dump stat if you're creating just a fighting type of character. And in a World War situation, who's not going to be creating a fighting character? But they've swapped things around. So instead of you rolling your perception for your initiative, you now roll your reflex, which is a dexterity skill. For melee combat, you're rolling your dexterity as well, which seems to make dexterity quite important. Strength is still used for resistance and brawling, but your perception now has your firearm skill. So shooting weapons becomes a perception skill, which makes a lot of sense and keeps perception quite important, unless you're just going for a brawling melee type character. But I think that's an interesting choice. We've got knowledge skills, we've got espionage, medical, scholar, sciences, survival and technical. We've got mechanical skills, which are demolition, drive, engineer, gunner, pilot and repair, disable. So if you can repair something, you can repair everything, which gets away from the terrible choice in Star Wars where everything had a separate repair skill. You know, you could repair a capital ship, but you couldn't repair a starfighter. That wasn't a transferable skill at all. We've got perception skills here: evaluate, gambling, instinct, investigate, marksmanship, which is your generic gun combat skill, and streetwise. We've got strength skills, which are brawling, climb, jump, lifting, stamina, swimming and throwing. Now, I noticed there is no running skill, although I saw mentioned elsewhere it being climbing, running. So I'm not sure which way they're going with that. There's still a wee mistake in the rules here. We've got willpower skills, which are bargain, charm, command, con, grit and intimidation. So willpower has become basically your charisma. Temporal reality skills. So you've got 3 extra skills which work very much like your sense, alter and control in Star Wars, your force powers. We've got using multiple skills. So if you're using multiple skills at once, you get a -1d penalty to all rolls. If you're using like 3 skills, you get -2 to all rolls, and so on. We've got scales. Instead of the myriad variety of scales in Star Wars, we're down to character scale, vehicle scale and grand scale. But it doesn't detail what they really are in this. It's leaving it a bit vague, but it's nice to actually see them there. Common task target numbers, trusting to luck, more nice artwork. Combat is a big part, and we go into the combat rules. So combat sequence, rolling initiative, surprise, declaring actions. It is very, very similar to how the D6 systems always worked. Anybody who's familiar with Star Wars will be familiar with this. Very easy to compare it. So we've got targets for range, various range categories. Weapon classes have their ranges. Situational attack modifiers, so if there's smoke or cover, you get penalties on your skills. Your SRP defenses. Now this is a new one, and again I'm a massive fan of what they've done here. SRP is surprised, ready and psych. Well, we'll throw psych to the side. That's your psychic defenses. It's your willpower in Star Wars. But surprised and ready are different. If you're not expecting attack, people have a target number of your perception times 3 to hit you. Now, that's the die code. So if your perception's 2 dice, then the target number's 6. If your perception's 3 dice, then the target number's 9. It doesn't matter about the pips, the pluses onto the dice at all. And if you're ready, then you're using the dexterity. So again, there's a reason for having 2 stats high, because you're not always going to expect attacks, but most of the time in combat you are. So you're going to be using 2 different stats as the target number for people to be able to hit you. Really good idea. Like that a lot. We've got full defense, where you're using your sort of dodge combat and rolling that to create a target number. Movement in combat, standing or prone, that's got an advantage that prone characters are more accurate when attacking with firearms, plus 1d, and are harder to hit at range, minus 1d, but they have difficulty with thrown and muscle power ranged weapons, minus 1d, and make for easy targets in hand-to-hand combat, plus 1d. So it's got advantages. You can lie prone and be a sniper and gain bonuses to shoot at range, but if somebody walks up to you, you'll lay on the ground and you're going to be easy to hit. We've got the damage system. Now, this is one of the areas where I have a problem, because I've played first edition Star Wars and they're bringing back something from that. You roll your damage of the weapon against your strength, and if your strength, if the damage is more, then you take levels of damage. But in second edition Star Wars Revised, if your strength roll is higher than the damage, then you shrug off the attack completely. However, in first edition, you can never shrug it off at all. If you were hit, no matter how high you rolled and how low the damage of the weapon, you will receive a stun. And the effects of the stun are the defender can't take any basic actions for the rest of the combat round. So, person who goes first, if they can stun you, you can't do anything. And if they keep rolling higher than you, you never get to act. You are stunned, 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 stunned. Now that is really annoying, that a small, weak enemy who is very fast can basically swamp you and you can never act. That's a big flaw in the rules. I've seen that happen in first edition Star Wars and it annoyed the heck out of me. It's a terrible, terrible rule. And they've reintroduced it here. I'm probably going to get shouted out in the comments because people love that rule in first edition Star Wars. They thought it added variety, but I just saw it happen so much to people where they just didn't get to do anything. We've got the wounded levels, so stunned, wounded, incapacitated, and mortally wounded. So a wound, you get a penalty to all your dice rolls. A stun, you can't do anything, but you recover from quickly. Incapacitated, you fall prone, and you can't take any more actions until you're no longer incapacitated. And mortally wounded, you're rolling 2d6, and as long as you're rolling over the number of rounds since you became mortally wounded, you're fine. If you roll under, then you are passing away, singing to the choir invisible. We've got mental trauma, so basically the psychic attacks. Recovery times for levels. We've got fatigue, mental recovery. We've got some weapons here, so we can see that the damages are basically equivalent to Star Wars. We've got an infantry rifle at 5D, which would be your standard 5D heavy blaster pistol or blaster rifle. However, the Witwenmacher sniper rifle at 9D is incredibly damaging, and a pump-action shotgun at 8D is also massively damaging. I think everybody will want to carry one, because basically you kill people very, very quickly if you're doing that much damage. Anyway, we've got hand-to-hand, weapons, which basically are strength plus a die code, exactly the same as the Star Wars system. And we've got descriptions of the weapons. We've got armor, a nice feature. Again, loving what they've done with this. Your different types of armor have a die code or a pip associated them, but in Carbon Grey they stack together. So if you're wearing a trench armor with a helmet, you're getting 2d from the trench armor and then +1 from the helmet. So 2d plus 1 armor. Now that's really simple to work out. Under Star Wars you kind of had to work out where you were hit and what armor you were getting from that, which was a bit annoying. But under this, nope, simple to work out. You get an armor rating, you get to add that to your strength. That also limits that you can't have armor higher than your strength, which makes a lot of sense. If your armor's too heavy, you just can't wear it. And in Star Wars, various types of armor would come with a penalty. They would limit your dexterity and therefore limit your dexterity skills, so your ability to dodge and attack, by being encumbered by armor. So Stormtrooper armor would give you 2 dice, but give you a 1 dice penalty. So you'll be able to resist damage better, but you get hit more often. And this does that the same, but it's based on the total armor rating. So instead of you trying to find armor items which don't give you a penalty, you automatically get a penalty as you build your armor up. And I like that a lot. That's a brilliant tactic or technique they've added. Ammunition and reloading. We've got vehicles which have briefly gone over. Instead of them having a body, they've now got a frame, maneuverability and speed. We've gone back to the first edition Star Wars D6 system idea of speeds being a dice code and adding to the player's piloting skill when they're getting away, which is really quite nice. So in a chase, you'll be rolling your piloting skill against whoever's chasing you's piloting skill, and each of you will be adding the speed of your vehicles to those rolls, and whoever's getting higher is either catching up or getting away. Nice. Allies, enemies, and extras. So, we reached the stats for the first time, and I've kind of been holding off because they list the stats in a very different way. Because in Star Wars D6, you would have your dexterity skill, and then you would have a stealth on top of that, and you add them together automatically. So your stealth skill would be, if you had a 1-die stealth skill, basically you would have stealth of 4D. Now I still think it works that way, but they're listing it as differently, so it's 1D. So instead of it being more expensive, because you have a high attribute, it's only going to be more expensive if you have a high skill. So it's going to be a lot cheaper to buy up skills to get your advantage. So if you've got a dexterity skill which is high and you're wanting to buy skills up, it's not going to be terribly expensive to buy them up to have a massive bonus on top of your already high dexterity. Whereas under the Star Wars system, if you started as a high skill, high attribute, and then had a skill on top of that, you're going to pay out right from the beginning for having a much, much higher skill than everybody else. And that was a balancing system. But they really don't detail it. That's an assumption, and I could be completely wrong. It's just a concern that's ringing alarm bells with me. So we've got various ones there. A green recruit, infantry officer, thugs, war dogs, which have stats and skills for some reason. Seems a bit odd. Dog handlers, guards, cannon fodder, guard officers, elite guards, bloodthirsty sharpshooters. And then we're on to a Quickstart adventure for Carbon Grey. Now I'll skip through this, but it looks very nice. There's some random encounters in there, there's a battlefield. This is exactly what you're looking for. Very nice stuff. I will continue to skip through. It talks out here, earned rewards, what you would get your experience for, bonus points, hero points, and give everyone a bonus skill point each. But it doesn't really explain how the skill points work anywhere in the rules. So that seems a little pointless. Hero points. If all the kids made it to the whatever it is, award 6 hero points to each PC. So there's a massive amount of hero points, which lends to my idea that hero points will be quickly gained and quickly spent, creating a high action game, which is exactly what the D6 system's suited to. And then we've got some template characters here. Now, I really don't like the ornate font here. I find them quite hard to read, but they're quite nice. They're little printed out World War I era registration cards. That's kind of cool. I like that. And we go through, and what have we got? Royal Operative, Master Spy, Moonlighter, Trench Fighter, and Fervent Revolutionary. And then we're reaching the same back cover as the other book. So if we flip back to the front, I really like this. Carbon Grey, it's got a lot of really interesting rules in there. I've waited a long time to see some nice upgrades to the D6 system, and this definitely provides them. I am massively impressed with this. I think I'm going to contribute to the Kickstarter. I think I'm going to get myself a copy because I do like this game. But anyway, I think I've whittled on for quite long enough because I'm looking at my timer and I'm up to almost half an hour. So thank you massively for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment below, as it does do me massive favours with the YouTube algorithm. It really does. It helps me out. So thank you if you do that. But most of all, you look after yourselves. and I'll catch you later. Bye now.